My name is Lisa, and until recently, I was just a regular woman excited to welcome her first child. I never imagined I'd be telling the world a story about betrayal, humiliation, and an act of cruelty that no pregnant woman should ever have to endure. But I also never thought I'd learn the true meaning of strength, nor discover who really stands beside you when your life falls apart. This is my story, and I hope it helps someone who's quietly suffering feel a little less alone. On the surface, David and I looked like any other married couple. We met during our last year of university, got married in our mid 20s, and after 3 years of marriage, we were expecting our first child. I was 9 months pregnant, full of nerves and hope. And while the future felt uncertain, I truly believed motherhood would be a beautiful new chapter. What I didn't expect was that it would be the beginning of my unraveling and my awakening. David worked a white collar job and had weekends off. But unlike most soon to be fathers, he spent those weekends elsewhere, specifically at his parents' house, and not for any urgent reason. Not to fix something or help with anything or handle some emergency, just because that was their thing. Ever since we got married, he spent more weekends with his parents than with me. At first, I didn't mind. I told myself it's sweet that he's close to his family. That must mean he'll be a good dad. I ignored the small red flags like how he rarely helped me carry groceries or how he'd leave the house without even asking if I needed anything. Even after I got pregnant, the dynamic didn't change. I did everything around the house. I'd get up early, cook breakfast for David, see him off to work clean, do the laundry, and then drag myself with a belly the size of a watermelon to the market. If the rice bag was too heavy, I'd just ask the shopkeeper to help carry it to the front. David never came along, never offered, never asked. And yet I clung to the belief that he was just busy or not good at showing emotions. I even found comfort in starting a daily blog, a small personal space where I'd post pictures of my meals, flowers blooming on the porch, or just my thoughts. I didn't have many readers, but it gave me a sense of control and joy that I didn't get from my own marriage. Every time David came home from work, the pattern was the same. He'd throw his bag and jacket on the couch, grumble about something trivial, and retreat into silence or anger. One evening, I made hamburgers his favorite. When he got home, I greeted him warmly, tried to keep the mood light. He barely acknowledged me and went straight to the bath. After he changed into pajamas, I handed him a drink. That's when he asked, "Where's the beer?" I forgot. It was just one thing, one item. But the look he gave me like I'd failed him as a person was hard to forget. "Go get it now," he snapped. "I'm 9 months pregnant, David," I said gently. "Can't you get it yourself?" He exploded. "It's your mistake. Fix it. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you get special treatment." That was the first time I felt something inside me crack, something I couldn't quite glue back together. Still, I went. I walked to the convenience store at night, belly heavy and back aching. Along the way, I ran into Sarah, my neighbor, a kind woman who always smiled with her eyes. She asked me why I was out in my condition, and I brushed it off lightly. "Just a quick errand," I said. But she knew. Women like us, we recognize each other's silent suffering. When I returned home with the beer, David was lounging on the sofa, the dishes from dinner still untouched. He didn't even look at me when he said, "What took you so long?" I didn't reply. I handed him the beer and started cleaning. That night, I didn't cry. I just felt blank, as if part of me had gone into hiding. The next day, he acted as if nothing had happened. He cheerfully asked for dinner, complained about work, and left the house with a "see you," like we hadn't argued the night before. But something was changing in me. I started noticing things. How he only called me when he needed something. How he never asked about my health, the baby, or how I was holding up. How every argument somehow became my fault. One evening, David said he wouldn't be home for dinner, a company drinking party. I cooked a simple meal for myself and was just about to eat when I heard the door slam open. He was back. Apparently, the drinking party was canceled. He stormed into the kitchen. You didn't cook for me. Are you kidding me? You told me you wouldn't be home, I said. He looked at the table with disgust. What is this? You call this a meal? I stood there, silent, swallowing both my pain and my pride. Then came the dagger. You should learn to cook like my mother. That night, I didn't eat. The next morning, I received a phone call from my mother in law scolding me for not taking proper care of her son. She implied that I was being abusive to him. I couldn't even respond. I just apologized to get off the phone. Later that day, I pulled myself together and decided tonight's dinner will be perfect. He'll have nothing to complain about. I cleaned the house until it sparkled. I made a beautiful dinner. I even bought his favorite beer. I waited and waited and waited. Hours passed. No call, no message, no David. When he finally stumbled in near midnight drunk, I rushed to help him. But instead of letting me support him, he shoved me away and slurred, "Don't touch me. Don't come near me with that ugly face. You're disgusting." I stood in the doorway watching him collapse on the floor like a fallen tree. I didn't cry that night. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how I'd married someone who looked at me and saw nothing but inconvenience. The next morning, he woke up cheerful, casual, acting as though the night before never happened. That's when he made the announcement. Let's go on a family trip next week. My parents are joining. Next week. My due date was next week. When I reminded him of that, he waved it off. You're pregnant, not sick. You can rest in the car. He didn't ask if I was okay with it. He didn't care how I felt. It was already decided. I spent the next few days anxious, debating whether to speak up again. But then the day of the trip arrived. I tried one last time. I'm not feeling well. I don't think I should go. He scoffed. You'll be fine. Just get in the car. I climbed into the passenger seat, my body tensed, my instincts screaming. That's when it happened. A strange warmth, followed by a gush of fluid. I looked down, my water had broken. David, I said, we need to go to the hospital. Now, the baby is coming. He looked at me then at the seat and said the words I will never forget. Get out. You're going to make a mess in the car. I stared at him, frozen. My water had just broken. I was in labor, and my husband, the man I thought would protect me, was telling me to get out of the car because I might stain the seat. I said, get out, he repeated, annoyed. I need to clean the car. I could barely breathe. You can't be serious, I said, my voice trembling. We need to go. I'm in labor. The baby is coming. But David didn't look at me like a man who just heard his child was about to be born. He looked at me like I was ruining his day. I told you we're supposed to be going on a trip. This is unbelievable. You always make everything about you. Just go to the hospital by yourself. Then, without another word, he slammed the door, started the engine, and drove off. I was left standing in the driveway, in pain, shocked, and absolutely alone. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone. Every second felt like hours. My heart was pounding not just from the contractions, but from the reality of what had just happened. My husband had left me not metaphorically, but physically in the middle of labor. I dialed for an ambulance, my voice cracking as I tried to explain my situation. But then out of nowhere, I heard someone calling my name. Lisa. It was Sarah, my neighbor. The same woman who had once caught me walking to the convenience store alone at night while pregnant. She had always sensed something wasn't right. The moment she saw me soaked, bent over in pain, she didn't hesitate. Without asking a single question, she pulled out her phone, called for a specialized maternity taxi service, and held my hand. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered. Tears streamed down my face, not just from the physical pain, but from the overwhelming contrast between her kindness and David's cruelty. Sarah stayed by my side the entire ride to the hospital. She talked to the driver. She made sure I was comfortable. She cracked light jokes to distract me from the contractions. And when we arrived, she helped me out of the car and walked me in as if she were family. I'll stay until your parents arrive, she said firmly. I nodded, unable to find the words to express what her presence meant to me. Inside the hospital, staff took over, but Sarah didn't leave my side. While I was being prepped, she quietly contacted my parents and explained everything. I didn't know the exact words she used, but I could tell from her tone It wasn't sugar coated. She was angry, not just for me, but for every woman who's ever been abandoned in her most vulnerable moment. As I was being moved into a private room, my phone buzzed. It vibrated again and again, dozens of missed calls, all from David. Eventually, I answered, Lisa, hey, listen, I didn't mean to. Can you come home? I didn't respond. I hung up. When my parents arrived, the hospital staff discreetly turned off my phone. They saw my face and understood I needed peace, not panic. David's name wouldn't appear again, not on my screen and not in my delivery room. The labor was long and exhausting, but I wasn't alone. My mom held my hand. My dad, usually stoic, stood quietly nearby with misty eyes. The medical staff were kind, gentle, reassuring. When the baby arrived, red crying alive, I wept. Not for David, but for this new life. For the beginning of something I would build with or without anyone's help. As I held my newborn in my arms, Sarah appeared again at the door, smiling. I brought you fruit, she said softly, and some news. Sarah's expression changed as she handed my mother a phone. It's already spreading, she said. What is everything? Apparently, a bystander had witnessed the entire scene, David yelling at me, my water breaking him, abandoning me. They caught it on camera and posted it to social media. The video had already gone viral. People were outraged. But that wasn't even the twist. Sarah, it turned out, was married to the CEO of the company where David worked. Yes, David's boss's wife had seen it all, and she was done staying quiet. She had warned me in the past, gently, that if David ever crossed a line, she'd tell her husband. I always declined. I didn't want to cause trouble. But now, there was no holding her back. My husband is furious, she told me, her voice calm but firm. He said, if a man can't protect his own family, he doesn't deserve to represent this company. In the days that followed, while I rested and recovered, the fallout began. David's social media was bombarded with hate. His face, blurred in the original video, was quickly recognized by coworkers and neighbors. Comments ranged from, she's in labor and you leave too. This guy makes the Grinch look like a saint. Then came the consequences. David's employer suspended him, then fired him. Without a job and now a viral villain online, he had no way to pay the mortgage on our house. He moved back in with his parents, who, by the way, had also been exposed online for enabling and encouraging his behavior. Apparently, one of Sarah's friends lived near David's parents and said the entire neighborhood was talking. The shame, the whispers, the slow exile from their social circle. Meanwhile, I filed for divorce. My lawyer, a friend of my father's, was calm and methodical. David, however, refused at first. I didn't do anything wrong, he insisted. She's just emotional. This can be worked out. No, it couldn't. I submitted the video evidence. I showed the lawyer the call logs, the messages, the recording of him yelling. His parents tried to interfere. She's still part of our family, they shouted during one call. But when my dad got on the line and told them, you don't get to define family anymore, they went silent. One day, while holding my newborn, Sarah visited again. She sat beside me and smiled. You know, if you're ever curious. My son is single, she joked. I laughed for the first time in weeks. Too soon, I said. But a seed was planted. A few weeks later, David called one last time. My lawyer was on speaker. He begged. I lost everything. My job, my house. Everyone looks at me like I'm trash. Please, let's just go back to normal. There is no normal, I said calmly. Not after what you did. He got angry again, called me names, blamed me for destroying his life. Then I said the final words he'd ever hear from me. This call is recorded. Goodbye. Click. David thought it was over, that the worst had already happened, the job loss, the humiliation, the video going viral. But he had no idea that what he was about to face wasn't public anger. It was justice. The kind that comes not just from lawyers and courtrooms, but from life itself, slowly, quietly, and thoroughly. The divorce process moved forward with surprising speed, mostly because David had lost all leverage. He didn't want to pay child support, claimed he had no income, blamed the internet, his coworkers, even me, as if his choices didn't exist. His parents backed him up. They said I was ungrateful, that I should forgive and forget. But there was no forgetting, especially not for the baby in my arms who would grow up knowing that her mother chose peace over pain and taught her the same. The lawyer made it clear David had no legal grounds to demand anything. The video, the phone recordings, the witness testimony, it was airtight. And when we offered a final warning that we'd pursue court proceedings for full custody and public testimony, he caved. David signed the divorce papers. He walked away with nothing. No visitation rights, no contact with the baby, no property. His parents begged us not to make it public, but they were too late. It was already public. The internet has no delete button. And even if we'd stayed silent, his behavior screamed louder than any blog post or tweet ever could. Sarah's husband, the CEO, made sure David's name wouldn't appear on any hiring list in their network of companies. If he can't be trusted with his own family, he said he can't be trusted with a client account. At home, I was healing. Physically, yes, but more importantly, emotionally. My parents were pillars of support. They cooked, cleaned, took shifts at night to help with the baby. Sarah visited often and our bond deepened. Her kindness never felt performative. It was consistent, quiet, and always just enough. One afternoon, I told her, "You saved me." She shook her head. "You saved yourself. I just gave you a hand." Just when I thought we had reached the end of the drama, my phone rang again. This time it was my mother in law. I let it go to voicemail. Then I played it back on speaker. Her voice trembled with fake politeness. "Lisa, I know things got a little emotional, but David's really struggling. Could you maybe talk to him? Maybe even consider reconciliation. He's miserable without you. Miserable. He left me during labor. He shoved me out of a car. He said I was disgusting. And now, because he couldn't handle the backlash of his own behavior, he was suddenly miserable. No, not again. I never called her back. Instead, I forwarded the voicemail to my lawyer, just in case they tried to twist it into something else. And then I did something simple, but powerful. I turned off my phone, sat with my baby in my arms, and just breathed. For the first time in months, the house was silent. No yelling, no accusations, no walking on eggshells. Just peace. And in that silence, I realized something important. I wasn't healing from a breakup. I was recovering from a war I didn't know I'd been fighting for years. 1 week later, Sarah visited again. She brought her son. I hadn't met him before. He was polite, quiet, with kind eyes that reminded me of who I used to be before all of this. Before I became the woman who had to survive betrayal, birth, and legal battles all at once. We had tea, then lunch. Then slowly a friendship began to grow. At first, it was just a way to talk about life again without needing to explain all the scars. But over time, it became something more. Something gentle, something earnest, something deserved. I moved back into a small apartment near my parents. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. It was ours. My daughter, now a few months old, giggled often, slept better, smiled at sunlight. Sometimes in the early mornings, I'd walk with her through the park and watch other families go by. And for the first time, I didn't feel envy or bitterness. I felt hope. Rumors reached me. He was bouncing between short-term jobs. His name still showed up in Reddit threads and Twitter screenshots. The video had long since passed its viral peak, but it lived on as a digital scar, one that wouldn't fade. His parents stopped showing their faces in the neighborhood. Apparently, even they were tired of being whispered about in grocery stores and coffee shops. Sometimes people would message me anonymously, "Are you the woman from that video?" I'd say no, because I wasn't that woman anymore. Weeks turned into months. Sarah became family. Her husband respected my strength more than most people ever had. Their son and I stayed close. But most importantly, my daughter grew up never knowing what I had to survive to keep her safe. That was the real victory. Sometimes life doesn't give you closure, you have to build it yourself. That's what I learned in the final chapter of this story. Not just how to survive, but how to rise with grace, with strength, and with the quiet satisfaction of knowing I didn't just walk away. I walked towards something better. The day I was discharged from the hospital, my parents and I were cautious. We knew David and his family might try something desperate. After all, they hadn't stopped calling, texting, begging. and not out of love, out of panic. And sure enough, as we stepped out of the hospital with my newborn, we heard it. Lisa, it was David, voice desperate, flanked by his mother and father. But they didn't get close. Because before they could take a step, three men in suits moved between us. One of them turned to me and said calmly, "Don't worry, we're here at the request of the CEO. We're just here to ensure your peace." I turned to my mother. She smiled and whispered, "Sarah handled everything." In that moment, I felt something shift permanently. I would never be afraid of these people again. Even with the divorce filed, David wouldn't sign the child support agreement. He claimed he had no money, claimed he didn't want the kid anyway. That was fine by me. But when my lawyer offered to garnish his retirement savings, his tune changed. Fast. Still, it wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about making sure that for once he faced consequences. He tried one final time a supervised phone call, hoping to manipulate his way back. "You recorded that call." "That's not fair. I was joking. Please, we can fix this. I can't live like this." I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just said this recording will be used as evidence. Goodbye. Then I hung up forever. The silence was beautiful. I didn't miss the yelling, the insults, the walking on eggshells. Instead, I woke up to tiny baby breaths and the smell of fresh sheets. I spent afternoons with my parents listening to music. I shared coffee with Sarah and watched our children, hers older, mine, just beginning play quietly on the porch. And slowly the wounds started to close. Months passed. Sarah's family, especially her son, became regulars in my life. We celebrated birthdays together, cooked together, took walks in the evenings together. What started as gratitude slowly became friendship. And then unexpectedly, that friendship became something more. Not a fairy tale romance, but a bond built on mutual respect. He knew my story, all of it, and still chose to stand beside me. It was the first time I'd felt safe around a man in years. Meanwhile, David couldn't escape his past. The video still circulated, his name still popped up online. Every job he applied for denied, every social event awkward. He even tried to shift blame, claiming I staged the whole thing. But no one believed him, because the footage spoke louder than his lies. At one point, I heard he moved to a distant town to start fresh. But fresh starts require growth, and David never grew. He just ran. One rainy afternoon, I received a letter. It wasn't from David, it was from his mother. The handwriting was messy, uncertain. The tone wavered between guilt and desperation. "We failed you. We failed our grandchild. We were blinded by pride, and now we live in shame." I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I folded it, placed it in a drawer, and moved on. My daughter is 2 now, bright, curious, full of laughter. She doesn't know what I went through to bring her into the world, and she never will, not fully. Because I carry that burden so she doesn't have to. She knows she is loved, supported, safe. And one day when she's older, I'll tell her the truth. Not to make her hate her father, but to teach her something important. Strength isn't just walking away. It's knowing when to stop explaining yourself and start building again. People still ask me, "Do you regret marrying David?" No, because without that experience, I wouldn't have become this version of myself. I wouldn't have met Sarah. I wouldn't have found my voice. I wouldn't have learned the difference between being polite and being powerful. What he gave me was a brutal lesson. But what I gave myself was a new life, and I intend to live it fully, freely, and unapologetically. If someone walks away from you in your most vulnerable moment, let them, because their absence will teach you more than their presence ever could. And sometimes the person who was too weak to fight back becomes the strongest one of all.